The US is no longer the biggest economic power in the world, but Biden claims that US is the best economy in the world. Biden has said he wants competition with China, not the conflict. US is standing against China's unfair economic practices. Even China's labor force is shrinking every year. But on the other side, China's extraordinary economic growth over the past 4 decades has completely changed the balance of power in the world. So, hello viewers, welcome back to our channel GeoKit, your daily guide to geopolitical affairs. If you are new to the channel and enjoy learning about geopolitical issues and current position of countries in the international relations, you will find our videos helpful. In this video, we will discuss about how China is affected amid US sanctions, why US didn't bear China's growth, and most importantly, what are the views of Biden on US-China economic issue. Watch the video until the end to know how China plans for economic growth in future. So without any delay, let's get started. The most realistic metric for comparing GDP in different countries recommended by the IMF is that of purchasing power parity. Clearly, GDP size is not entirely correlated with economic and political power. But China, comprising of 1.4 billion population and a GDP double the size of its closest rival, puts the US in a very different position. Over the last decade, China produced an astonishing 31.2% of all global economic growth, as against 9.6% from the US. When China entered the World Trade Organization in December 2001, the primary trading partner for most countries was the US. Just 20 years later, China has overtaken the US to become the biggest trading partner of most of the significant nations of the world. And China has also become the home of the largest number of the most valuable companies in the world. In recent years, views of the United States and China have changed a lot. This year, the US is largely viewed positively. At the same time, China is seen much more negatively, especially in high-income countries. But favorably, this does not tell the whole story. Both countries are seen positively in some ways and negatively in others. While majorities in most countries see both the US and China as more likely to interfering in the affairs of other countries, the US is almost always more likely to be described this way. The US also gets higher marks for contributing to global peace and stability than China does. The difference is greatest in Japan, where 79% say the US contributes at least a fair amount to international stability, and just 14% say the same of China. While still in many countries, differences are smaller. The US economy is larger than China's, but has tended to grow less per year, at least until recently. Still, the US is considered by most surveyed publics to be the world's leading economic power. In Sweden, 51% now say that the US is the leading economy, compared with 39% in 2020 when they were more likely to give the title to China. But in terms of GDP PPP, China has surpassed USA. South Koreans expects to see US as the world's top economy. Still, 5 countries, most of which are in Europe, see China as the leading economy. This includes Italy, which is the only country where a majority considers China the world's leading economy. Nearly half of the world's GDP comes from China and the US combined. China has overtaken the Eurozone as the world's number 2 largest GDP contributor behind the US. The US and China are both widely seen as technological powerhouses. Together, they dominate the global digital market. Between Android and iOS, American companies have the vast majority of the mobile operating system market share worldwide, while China leads the charge toward 5G and global network coverage. 72% countries describe US technology as the best, and 69% say the same about Chinese technology, but surveys say that American products are well made. China's technology gets more variable ratings. Israel is the only country to have a majority that say China's technological products are poorly made. With regards to data security, views are mixed. On balance, people are more likely to say technology produced by American companies protects personal data than to say the same of Chinese companies. Earlier in 2023, TikTok faced a potential ban in the US. Most Americans were similarly distrusting when asked about data privacy and the behavior of Chinese social media companies. In the past decade, China has emerged as a frontrunner in developing and applying digital technologies, particularly AI. Concurrently, Chinese authorities have implemented regulations focusing on data and consumer protection. This regulatory approach contrasts with the US, another of the world's AI powerhouses. Both nations leading in AI technology and influence set global standards, and their policies are pivotal in the unfolding US versus China AI race. Despite these advancements, China faces significant challenges in the AI sector. The landscape shifted in November 2022 when OpenAI launched ChatGPT. While China has made remarkable progress by demonstrating Baidu's AI chatbot launch. Despite hosting over 100 large language models, China faces challenges such as limited access to advanced chips, censorship, and high development costs. China faces a significant obstacle in this journey, mainly due to limited access to advanced graphics processing units from companies like NVIDIA, due to restrictions imposed by US trade sanctions. These GPUs, especially the NVIDIA H100, which is priced at around $30,000 apiece, are vital for developing advanced large language models. Major tech companies, including Microsoft, Meta Platforms, Google, Amazon, and Oracle, have all made substantial investments in these technologies. Meanwhile, Chinese tech giants face purchasing limits imposed by the US government. This move aimed to block China's access to cutting-edge chips like NVIDIA's H100 and A100, citing national security concerns. Ultimately, AI is a critical component for cloud business growth, with companies like Tencent and Huawei aiming to monetize AI technology through their cloud platforms. This dynamic underscores the diverse approaches and challenges in China's evolving AI landscape. The US and China are home to two of the world's largest militaries. China's active forces are nearly double the size of the US, though the US outspends China on defense. Majorities in every country say that the American military is best, while the same is only true for China. The US military receives significantly higher ratings than China's. Germany, Netherlands, and UK, all NATO allies, the US and China's military, all these are about equally likely to be considered to be best. However, the US military gets more recognition than China's when considering only those who say each is the best. The United States has said China is expanding its arsenal of nuclear weapons even more quickly than expected. China had more than 500 operational nuclear warheads by May 2023 and was on track to exceed previous projections. Beijing was likely to have more than 1,000 operational nuclear warheads by 2030 and will continue expanding its capabilities to ensure its modernization is basically complete by that year. That would still be considerably below the US and Russia's current deployed nuclear arsenal, however, with Washington having about 1,410 nuclear warheads and Russia 1,550. China is currently embarking on a mission to develop new weaponry and enhance its military training as part of a major modernization drive to ensure the country has a world-class military by 2049, and as well as its nuclear expansion. The US report suggested China was also learning lessons from Russia's war in Ukraine, and that the sanctions imposed on Moscow had probably encouraged China to push for improved defense self-sufficiency and financial resilience. After military, there are many sectors that China intends to strengthen more than ever. In 2020, China replaced the US as the world's largest film market after a number of successful local productions. In May 2023, Xi Jinping announced plans for strengthening China's education system to spread its global influence and create a Study in China brand. Currently, out of the top 100 universities in the world, only 7 are in China, whereas 34 are in the US. As of 2021, both the US and China fall above the world average on the United Nations Human Development Index. The US is generally considered by experts to be more democratic than China. Among other organizations, Freedom House describes the US as free and China as not free. International IDEA labels the US a democracy versus China's strict government. Public opinion follows the same pattern. The US government is seen as more respectful of its people's personal freedoms than China's. When it comes to leaders, global publics are nearly 3 times more likely to have confidence in US President than in Chinese President Xi Jinping. Each country surveyed is more likely to have confidence in Biden than Xi Jinping, but this has not always been the case for ratings of the US president. Views of the two leaders were most similar in several countries when former President Donald Trump held office. With a GDP of around $18 trillion, China boasts the world's second largest economy, while US remains on the top. The combination of low labor costs and advanced technology has placed China as the global manufacturing hub. Before we proceed further, discussing the US strategies against China and view of Joe Biden on this, how he strengthened the sanctions further, I'd like to hear from you. Are you finding this video informative? Feel free to share your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. And if you're finding it helpful, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support means a lot to us and helps us reach a wider audience and the content that you'll love. Let's continue this journey together. State Grid holds the title of the largest utility company globally. In 2022, it reported more than 850,000 employees and served 1.1 billion customers. China's State Construction Engineering, the world's largest construction company, famous for constructing 2 hospitals in Wuhan in less than 2 weeks during the COVID-19 pandemic. In contrast, the US top 15 list leans more towards a presence of retail and technology companies. China claims 3 spots, with oil and gas companies China National Petroleum and Sinopec Group, leading ahead of companies like ExxonMobil, Apple, and Berkshire Hathaway. In the mid-1980s, US politicians limited US markets to Japan's exports and pushed Japan to overvalue its currency. The Japanese yen appreciated from time to time, 240 yen per dollar in 1985, then 128 yen per dollar in 1988, and 94 yen per dollar in 1995, pricing Japanese goods out of the US market. Japan paid a heavy cost of this later, hence their economy collapsed. Now the US is taking aim at China. Starting around 2015, US policymakers came to view China as a threat rather than a trade partner. This change of view was due to China's economic success. China's economic rise really began to alarm US strategists when China announced in 2015 a Made in China 2025 policy to promote China's advancement of robotics, IT, renewable energy, and other advanced technologies. Around the same time, China announced its Belt and Road Initiative to help build modern infrastructure throughout Asia, Africa, and other regions, largely using Chinese finance, companies, and technologies. President Barack Obama first proposed to create a new trading group with Asian countries that would exclude China, but Donald Trump went further, promising outright protectionism against China. After winning the 2016 election on an anti-China platform, Trump imposed unilateral tariffs on China that clearly violated World Trade Organization rules. American firms were advised informally to shift their supply chains from China to other countries via a process called friendshoring. In carrying out these measures, the US completely ignored WTO principles and procedures. To ensure that WTO would not rule against the US measures, the US disabled the WTO appellate court by blocking new appointments. The Trump administration also blocked products from leading Chinese technologies companies such as ZTE and Huawei, and urged US allies to do the same. When President Joe Biden came to office, many expected Biden to reverse Trump's anti-China policies, but the opposite happened. Biden doubled down, not only maintaining Trump's tariffs on China, but also signing new executive orders to limit China's access to advanced semiconductor technologies and US investments. We have already described this with details in our previous video, that how USA cut off trade with China to partner with Mexico as new trade export partner. You can watch that video after this. Link is mentioned in the description. Now let's get back to the topic. The US strongly denies that it is in an economic war with China, but as the old saying goes, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. The US is using a familiar technique. Even though the US says it's not fighting China, its actions and the words of its politicians make it seem like they are treating China as an enemy that needs to be stopped. The US's effort to limit China's influence isn't just a bad idea, but it won't work either. China will make friends all over the world to keep growing trade and technology. The results are seen in a reversal of China's exports to the US. At the beginning of Trump's presidency in January 2017, China accounted for 22% of US merchandise imports. And when Biden took charge of presidency in January 2021, China's share of US imports had dropped to 19%. As of June 2023, China's share of US imports had dropped to 13%. But how US did this? To know this, it is recommended to watch our previous video in which we have mentioned in the detail that how US cut off China as a trade partner. Link is mentioned in the description. Projections about China's growth prospects are a fraught exercise. And at best, forecasters can use the growth of various factors that go into the creation of output as indicators of what the future might hold, and according to Chinese government, their GDP growth is expected to be around 5%. We have already made a video on China's GDP growth, which is highly recommended, and you can watch after this video. Link is mentioned in the description. Analysts predict that China's economy will increasingly rely on state investment high-tech development, and domestic consumption by 2030. According to the British Consultancy Center for Economics and Business Research forecasts, China's GDP should grow 5.7% per year through 2025 and then 4.7% annually until 2030. Its forecast says that China, now the world's second-largest economy, would overtake the U.S. economy by 2030. Economists say Chinese leaders will probably prioritize tech, especially hardware, that does not require constant innovation. If the country does become self-sufficient in terms of technology and then is able to sell and export those products and services that are based on the technology, then that would be a huge bump to its economy, because that is a key factor certainly of the US GDP now. McWilliams told the media that status as the world's largest economy does not give any advantages automatically, but countries dependent on the Chinese economy would pay attention to this. Furthermore, he said that there is no gold medal or anything for being world's largest economy. But when you've got more money to spend, you do have the ability to influence others, and China will have that ability to influence other countries. The result of expectation that China surpassing the US has been a bolder foreign policy that seeks to settle regional disputes in China's favor and to delegitimize US regional and global leadership under the assumption that China is destined to set the new rules of international relations. US and China each will advance at least 5 large-scale cooperative carbon capture, utilization, and storage projects by 2030, including carbon capture from industrial and energy sources. An alternative measure of country wealth is based on purchasing power parity and is widely believed to be more reliable as a measure of relative GDP between countries than simple dollar values. In 2022, the IMF judged the Chinese economy in PPP terms to be 23% larger than America. Furthermore, the COVID recovery that was expected has not materialized. Export levels have fallen, and difficulties in the property sector have become more entrenched. This has resulted in a burst of downwardly graded growth forecasts for 2024 from analysts at major banks. Biden has said US has revitalized its partnership with its allies and countries like India, Australia, and Japan amidst the rise of China, as he accused Beijing of indulging in unfair economic practices and endangering peace across the Taiwan Strait. Biden, in his final State of the Union address, said the U.S. wants competition with China, but not conflict. Biden, seeking re-election in November, said America is in a stronger position to win the competition for the 21st century against China. He further said that we are standing up against China's unfair economic practice, standing up for peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. We revitalized our partnership with allies and the Pacific India, Australia, Japan, and South Korea. The means that US is constantly suppressing China, the list of unilateral sanctions is constantly extended, and the desire to inflict punishment on China has reached an unimaginable level. In his address, Biden claimed that the US has the best economy in the world and said that since I've come to office, our GDP is up, and our trade deficit with China is down to the lowest point in over a decade. I've made sure that the most advanced American technologies can't be used in China's weapons. Do you think that China, which is constantly rising, will be further sanctioned by China? Due to ongoing situations between both rivals, China has already set a goal of 5% growth this year. If you want to know how China is planning for such a growth and how US is intervening in that, click on the link in description. We have already mentioned that in our previous video, and it's highly recommended you to watch that. Until then, let us know your opinions in the comments section, and don't forget to share the video and like and click on the subscribe button as well for remaining updated. We'll keep you updated regarding the situation. Until the next video, stay tuned.